Hello, everyone. It would be remiss of me not to say something about this historic day, and it is a historic day for the United Kingdom, um, and I would argue beyond, when we consider the wider Commonwealth realm. So today, of course, is Coronation Day. Charles III becomes king. Um, there's a few things to point out about this, just in terms of the historic detail. Um, by my count, Charles is the 60th monarch of England, Great Britain, and the United Kingdom. Scotland, of course, has had its own monarchs up until 1707. Well, actually, up until 1603, I should say. But looking at the line of English and British monarchs, I count Charles as the 60th. Now, this is not an exact science because there is some disputed claimants to the throne. For example, Louis the Lion, who controlled up to two-thirds of England and actually had a ceremonial procession in London during the period known as the Anarchy. The Empress Matilda, Lady Jane Grey. These are people who were called kings and queens, but there's some dispute over that. So it may be a little bit less than 60. Charles is the fifth sovereign of the Windsor dynasty, and he's the oldest man to become king at the age of 74. But his health seems pretty good. He seems to be in robust health, so I think people have said it'll be a very short reign. I don't think it will actually. I think it could be an average length, maybe 15 years. I mean, assuming he has the longevity of his mother, Elizabeth II lived to 96. Charles is 74, so another 20 years. Who knows? Who knows? This is the thing about monarchs and their lifetimes. It coincides with history. Now, there is so much to say about this, around the event, around the politics of it, around what it means for us as a nation. And I'm not going to cover everything in this one video, so just going to scratch the surface here. Also, it's very late and I'm quite tired, but I did want to make this before things get underway. Um, this is the first coronation, really, of the modern era in the sense of the digital era. Now, Elizabeth II's coronation was modern in the sense that it was televised. I'm not sure if George VI's coronation was televised, or at least it was very limited televised. I think there was radio broadcasts, and I don't think it was televised. I'd need to double check that. But the fact that the 1953 coronation was televised in colour, this was in the post-war years. It was a big event for that reason. In that sense, the fact that it's televised is not historic because the last one was televised, but it is historic in the sense that it's the first coronation of the 21st century in this country. It's the first coronation in the digital age. In this, in a lot of other, there's a lot of other firsts with this. It's the first coronation to have two divorcees take the throne in Charles and Camilla. I think the church has moved on from this. I don't think there's a sort of rigidity that there was in the 50s around things like that. Some people might say that's hypocritical, but I think the 1990s changed the monarchy in this sense. And the crown, although it didn't get everything right, I did think they got the right sort of touch in the last series about how the 1990s in particular changed things. Um, And it would be remiss of me not to mention briefly the ghost of Diana. There will be some saying that it's sad that she is not the queen consort, but what needs to be remembered is Charles and Diana divorced in 1995, before Diana died, so she was never going to be consort, even if she hadn't died young in tragic circumstances. Diana was never going to be consort. Um, there is a certain sadness about that, but personally, I think people who still sort of hate Camilla on a personal basis need to frankly move on because what does it show? It shows they're human beings. They made mistakes. They done things that were immoral. But I personally don't think that Camilla deserves quite the scorn that she gets. And I think clearly these people are right for each other. And I think anyone who believes in constitutional monarchy, as I do, should see it for what it is. See that this is a couple who are very much meant to be together. regardless of the flawed background behind it, so that, think of it what you will, but that's reality. Camilla is the queen consort. She'll be styled as queen, and that's just the way it is. That's history. Uh, I mean, my goodness, when we look at the Middle Ages, look at the sort of cutthroat. I watch a documentary right now on the Plaid Tangent. It's just in the background as I'm multitasking, and really, modern monarchy is quite clean by comparison. So, yeah, Um, this is a very, very long tradition. It goes back over a millennium. Now, who was the first king of England? There's some debate over this, actually. Most people would probably say Alfred, um, who reigned from 886 to 899, but it depends on how this is defined. Alfred was the last king of the West Saxons, and he's largely credited with unifying England, but it wasn't wholly unified until the reign of Ethelstan in around 927, incidentally around the same time Kenneth MacAlpine unified Scotland, so actually slightly earlier. So we can roughly trace the lineage of English and British monarchy from that time. There's been numerous dynasties, of course. Um, I have a little set of playing cards. So actually, they're not playing cards. If I could just pick them up, they're in the next room. Yeah. Anyway, it's just a little set of cards, not playing cards. They're just a little set of information cards that I got in the Tower of London back in 1996. And interestingly, they go just from William the First, William the Conqueror, which is it's a great little set. But I think really they should start from the Saxon kings. But like I say, about 60 monarchs since that time. Some of them have been co-monarchs. Mary the First, so that's Mary Tudor, and Philip the Second of Spain were co-monarchs. William the Third and Mary the Second at the end of the Stuart era. Um, I love history. I've always been fascinated by history. I think it shapes a nation. I just find the subject interesting, and I have a pretty strong knowledge of history. Not perfect, not flawless. I sometimes get my medieval monarchs mixed up in terms of the order. But I tested myself the other day, and I think I passed with flying colours, except for I forgot Edward V. But I think there'll be a lot more to say about the subject. But my basic point to Republicans would be Britain's not Thailand. We do not have lèse majesté in this country, and I know there is controversy over some of these plans to move on Republican protesters, and apparently they receive threatening letters. Now, I don't know the nature of those letters, so I can't comment too much on that. Let me just put it this way. Britain's not Thailand. We don't have lèse majesté. You won't go to prison for questioning the monarchy. And no one is forcing you to celebrate. I think there's a little bit of fatalism about this, or if I could say cynicism. Um, I mean, if I look at sort of recent royal events, I think to the Diamond Jubilee of Elizabeth II, 2012. Now, we had a street party in my street for that. There was no street party for the Platinum Jubilee, and there's no street party going on today for my own family. I'll be watching it with my parents, and I bought a flag on eBay for the event. I'm a monarchist, so I will be marking it. Um, Apparently, some events around the country have been cancelled from lack of interest. Now, I think that's unfortunate because even if people aren't monarchists, it's a historic event. I don't think it's necessarily a case that you have to be sycophantic towards the king or even like the king, but it is a newsworthy event. It's a historic event. If nothing else, that's something. I think that's a little bit unfortunate that there isn't that is the case, and it does vary from region to region. I'm going to read out some statistics that the Daily Mail promoted the other day, published the other day, which show that actually there is still support for monarchy. So I'll just show you what I'm reading from. This is from the date is May the 2nd. This is statistics. I'm just going to read them out, or the data that's been compiled. Okay. So, would you keep the monarchy if a referendum were held tomorrow? Yes, 56%. No, 23%. And don't know, 21%. Um, it's certainly not solid for the monarchy, but it's still a majority. How different groups voted in England? 57% yes, only 22% no. Scotland 46 to 32, so the margin's a bit closer in Scotland, but still a majority for the monarchy. Wales 54 to 23, similar to England. Northern Ireland 42-46 now. That shows Northern Ireland is the only one of the home nations where there's a slight majority in favour of voting for a republic. This is not exact, and it can always change over time. I'm not overly surprised by that. Northern Ireland's demographics have generally changed in the last 20, 30 years. Certainly when I was born, it would have been probably 90% for the monarchy, especially in certain parts of Belfast, where they have giant murals of the Queen. 865 plus 74% for retaining the monarchy to 14%. 18 to 24, 28 to 34. Not surprising, the younger generation, that's Generation Z and younger millennials, are in favour of abolishing it. Conservative, no surprise, 81% to 9%. Labour 42 to 38, very close, but still a slight majority in favour of the monarchy. The Liberal Democrats pretty solid, 65 to 22. SNP, no surprise, 27% to 51%. Nicola Sturgeon never put a Republican spin on her nationalism. In fact, I think she was in favour of retaining the monarchy, at least publicly. Yusuf is taking a different angle. I think he's making a mistake to do that. Leave voters 73% to 13%, Remain voted 54 to 31. Those results are not really surprising. How do you think the rest of the country would vote? 69% of respondents, including a majority of those voting for a republic, said they thought the country would vote to keep the monarchy if a referendum took place tomorrow. So that's actually a bit higher. So the public perception is that there is actually stronger support for the monarchy than what this actually shows. If a vote is held in 10 years' time, 2033, keep the monarchy 36%, become a republic 28%. So even looking at a future projection, people still favour that. 50 years, keep the monarchy just 20%, become a republic 38%. In 50 years, I will be 87 years old, so who knows what's going to hold in the future. Will William V ever be king? Will George VII ever be king? I mean, by that point, I think a lot is going to change, but that's for another video. Let's see. There's a lot more to look at here. In terms of popularity, members of the royal family, the most popular, not surprisingly, the late Queen Elizabeth II. The most popular living royal, again, not really surprising, is the Prince of Wales, William. Then the late Princess Diana. Interestingly, 1% more for William than Diana. Interesting. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, remains popular, 62%. Catherine's popular, 62%. The King, Charles, not unilateral, but 54%, still on the upper end of things. The royal family as a whole, 52%. The institution of the monarchy, 50%. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, 44%. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, 41%. Of course, have acquired those titles recently. Camilla, 39%. Harry, 22%. Meghan, 18%. I haven't even mentioned them, but that might be enough for another video. And Andrew, not surprisingly, 7%, way down at the bottom. I think this is a YouGov poll. They're not quoting the source here. I think it's YouGov. And there's other statistics here, but let's see. Even most Republicans, this is an interesting point. Even most Republicans see no benefit in abolishing the monarchy. This is Andy Cheering doing the report. Even those who would vote for a republic agree that the monarchy works, with most telling the poll they only want to get rid of it out of principle. Of respondents who would back removing the monarchy tomorrow, less than a third, 28%, told the study by Lord Ashcroft, that's, excuse me, not YouGov, it's a Lord Ashcroft study poll, that they would do so because it would bring great practical benefits. Most of them, 66%, said so because the royal family is wrong in principle, so we should replace it whether there are practical benefits or not. In other words, Republicans are sort of, according to this poll anyway, are guided kind of by principle as opposed to practicality, and I think they acknowledge it isn't going to happen. So it's there's other polls there, but I'm not going to read out all of them. Well, I'll do one more. how Britain is split into five groups of royals. Angry abolitionists, 18%. Now, this is how the Daily Mail is reporting it. Committed royalists, 7%. So, kind of let's say, the hardline camps are the minority. That is, hardline abolitionists, hardline royalists. Modern Republicans, 19%. Mainstream monarchists, I'd probably be in that camp, 32%. Neutral pragmatists, 24%. So the majority, basically, of this country doesn't have very strong views on this. Um, and for me personally, I do think it would be like, I mean, I felt very, very strongly about Scottish independence. I have to say, I'd feel the same way if we suddenly became a republic. I think my gut feeling is we would really, really lose something that is integral to British culture. There's a lot of things that Republicans say that do need to be challenged. For example, the issue about equality. The fact of the matter is, the world's most equal societies happen to be the Nordic states: Norway, Sweden, Denmark. They're all monarchies. They're all constitutional monarchies. And by contrast, if we look at some republics, such as the United States, indeed, there's other republics that can be cited. The wealth poverty gap is even bigger. So this idea that you abolish monarchy, you abolish this inherited succession of power, of not power, but of prestige, it would somehow bring about an egalitarian society. I think that's not doesn't quite hold up to the facts. And in fact, if we look at France, if you look at some of the presidential chateaux that Macron enjoys, they're very much, they could rival anything that Charles III has. Um, so, one of the big claims against the Republic would be, would you really want a president, go for a president, Sunak, or you name it? Now, of course, I don't think this is necessarily, an argument in and of itself. That's, oh, but what if, I wouldn't say that. It's not my position that if Britain became a republic, it would be a disaster. I think we'd probably survive. But for me, it's basically a sentimental thing. Actually, I would go on the opposite spectrum, but along the same vein of thinking as those ideological Republicans. That is to say, for me, monarchy in this country is such an integral part of British culture. I mean, you don't think of Spain necessarily and think of the Spanish royal family. You don't think of the Netherlands and think of the Dutch royal family. You don't think of Belgium and think of the Belgian royal family. With all due respect to those countries, but you just don't. There's something about Britain and monarchy that is very, very closely tied. And I just don't see this going anytime soon. I do think the institution's going to have to modernise. And I think Charles has enormous weight on his back in terms of history, in terms of how he approaches this. But I think Charles is not stupid. I don't think he's the fool that some people think he is. I think he's a pragmatist. I think he's a modern man. And I think he will be a modern monarch. Um, and personally, I'm quite comfortable with the way things are. There's that expression, don't fix what isn't broken. I just think if we became a republic, we would lose something. I think and I know culture isn't an argument in of itself, but it isn't just that. I think that there are frankly much more pressing issues in this country. A lot of things that need to be addressed that will not be addressed simply by removing the monarchy. No, I'm only scratching the surface here. There really is a lot more to say about the subject. I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon because I didn't intend this video to be super long. Um, this will be a big event. I don't think it's going to be as watched as the Queen's funeral because that was exceptional. So Mark Rowley, really has his work cut out for him. He's handled two of the biggest security operations ever for the Metropolitan Police. In fact, I think the two biggest security operations ever in the Queen's State funeral and the coronation today. So, I wouldn't like to be in his shoes. It's a huge amount of responsibility. The police get a lot of slack, but it really, that's something that I don't envy. I hope there isn't any ugly incidents. I hope that Republicans are respectful. I support their right to have an opinion. This is the thing. I think they've every right to have an opinion, but I think you can have an opinion whilst, being respectful to others. So to me, if a Republican wants to sort of get on a loudspeaker down the mall and say, not my king, that's being disrespectful to the majority who are monarchists. Now, what I would say is make a video like I'm doing right now. Post whatever you want online, as long as it's not a threat. Just we cannot become like Thailand, where we become hypersensitive and people are, frightened to speak out. But at the same time, I do think what I've always disliked about republicanism is it's just always struck me as a little bit bitter, a little bit negative and cynical, and you know, um, let's just get rid of this. It's just like, is the system really so broken that you think that it just needs to be abolished? I'm not convinced about that argument. I think that there are definitely challenges. There's internal challenges with the royal family. There's challenges in terms of how does a monarchy, fit into the 21st century. I mean, it's a bit strange to think we're in 2023 and we're talking about King Charles III. It's sort of got echoes of history. Think about it. Edward the Confessor, Richard III, Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, King Charles II, and now we're talking King Charles III. It's got that sort of regality. It's got echoes of history, and yet we're in the digital age. We're in the age of smartphones and artificial intelligence and King Charles III. It's just to me, there's something about that that is special, and I think that I just don't think this country necessarily has an appetite for change. But one thing that I would concede is there isn't a massive enthusiasm either. I think a lot of people are kind of passive about it. I'm personally very interested because I'm interested in history, the ceremony, the history of Westminster Abbey, and all of that. But I think a lot of people just don't have very strong views on it either way. Um, what I am heartened by is that there isn't militant republicanism. In fact, probably the Republican sentiments were stronger in the 1870s when Queen Victoria was sort of the widow of Windsor. She had retreated. If anything, Republican sentiments were probably stronger then. I don't think this country is on the verge of becoming a republic, but I think that Charles and William and the whole royal family that they really will have to get the balancing act right. But anyway, that's more for another video. I'll be talking about that at a later date. For today, I just want to enjoy the event. I think it's a good thing. People say, well, the rise of living costs, and why waste money on this? But if we look at the last coronation, it was the same questions. It was an age of austerity, and yet it turned out to be a very popular event because it distracted people from that. It was a moment of celebration. Now, I see this as a celebration, even if you're not a monarchist. It's a bit of escapism from all the depressing news stories about knife crime and about, you name it. If nothing else, that's what it is. And I welcome it for that reason. So I'll be enjoying today, and I say God save King Charles III. Let me know your thoughts.